Welcome to Next Game's video on how to make Final Fantasy XI look beautiful in 2020 4K edition. This video is meant to be a continuation of my Make Final Fantasy XI Beautiful in 2020 video and simply showing the changes to run things in 4K. So if you haven't watched that video yet, I suggest you select the card in the upper right hand corner and watch that video before going through these steps. So now let's go over the changes to set up your Final Fantasy XI in 4K. Well, first, you're going to obviously need a 4K monitor. Without one, the options I'm about to show you will not be available. Next, you will want to be sure that you have the resolution of the screen you play Final Fantasy XI on to be 4K. Normally that means a resolution of 3840 by 2160. To do this, right-click on the desktop and go to Display Settings. Select the 4K monitor and make sure the resolution is showing 3840 by 2160. And also make sure that the scale and layout section says 100%. If it's set any higher, then the Final Fantasy window will not fit correctly on your 4K screen. In this next step, we will reconfigure the tools that we set up in our last video to use this new resolution. Let's start with the Final Fantasy XI config interface. Inside of the config menu, there are just two things that you need to change. The first is the resolution setting under Screen Settings on the General tab. Make sure this is now set to 3840 by 2160. Next, go to the Graphics tab and make sure the drawing precision under Screen Settings is set to 7680 by 4320. Now be sure to hit Close and Save, and let's move on to the Windows 4 settings. Once Windows 4 is open, click on the pencil icon to edit the default profile. On the next screen, make sure the resolution is set to 3840 by 2160, and then click on the Game tab. On this next screen is arguably the most important setting when it comes to setting up 4K in Final Fantasy XI, and that is the UI scale setting. This is what will change the scale of your user interface. A UI scale setting of 1x will keep everything the exact size it was in the default game. This means when it's displayed on your 4K screen, it's going to be very small. This may work well for some who play on larger 4K monitors, but for people with 30-inch monitors and smaller, this will definitely be too small to read the text. If you find that that's the case for you, then you need to increase the UI scale until the text is large enough for you to read. Please note though that each time you increase the setting, the text will become more blurry and take up more of your screen, so there is a trade-off here. I have found that a UI setting of 1 works well for larger screens if you can deal with the smaller text, and that a UI setting of 1.5 works well for smaller screens. I use a 43-inch screen and find the 1.0 great, but it will make the text in my videos very hard to read, so I've chosen to use 1.5 so that my viewers can continue to read things easily. I'm sure you've noticed throughout this video that unlike my previous videos, I'm having to zoom in a lot in order to actually get you to see any of the text just because 4K is offering me so much desktop space. This is fine on a large screen, but on smaller screens and phones, this is going to be impossible to read. So this is why I've chosen to go with the UI setting of 1.5 for my videos from now on. Most of the items that I had you install in my useful plugins and add-ons video, you can just drag to a new location, but Equip Viewer needs to be repositioned manually in your init.txt file. To do that, you will go to where you installed Windower and into your scripts folder, and then open the init.txt file for editing and scroll to the bottom. We want to change the Equip Viewer POS entry. I find that a setting of 2192 space 998, as you see here, works for me very well with a UI scale setting of 1.5, but you will have to play with it and see what positioning works best for you. Obviously, if you don't use Equip Viewer, you can just skip this step, but it's important to note that anything that you need to manually set the position for on your screen will need to be changed for your 4K screen, as now more than likely those UI elements will be in the middle of your screen. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some examples of what 4K looks like at the 1x and 1.5x UI scale setting. So before I show you 4K resolution, let's remind ourselves of what things look like at the end of our Make Final Fantasy XI Beautiful in 2020 video. This is how my screen looks during most of my videos. It is very crisp and clear and easy to read everything, but the amount of add-ons that I use tends to clutter up the screen quite a bit. What I'm left with is really only this square in the middle of my screen in regards to viewable area. This viewable space is the main thing that running Final Fantasy XI in 4K is going to gain you. Let's go ahead and take a look at our first example of what 4K looks like in our most extreme example. This will be running Final Fantasy XI with a 1x UI scale layout setting. Oh, and yes, I will get back to this Omen video in the coming weeks when I get back to my soloing of Omen bosses videos that are upcoming. So here we are in 4K. Now just look at all this viewable space where we can actually see what's going on. This is going to be the big difference that you'll see when you actually start using 4K, is just how much extra things you see going on, especially when you use a lot of add-ons. Now the swap for this is you can see how small all of the text is. For me, I'm viewing this on a 43-inch 4K screen, a few feet in front of me. So in that situation, I can actually read it just fine. So if you have a similar situation, this may work for you. However, if you have a 30-inch screen or smaller, I can imagine this is going to be very difficult to read, and therefore, you should bump up the UI interface number. Let's see what happens when we bump it to 1.5. Here we are with the UI scale setting at 1.5. As you can see, the viewable space has been significantly reduced. However, we are able to fit in twice as many lines of chat as we did in 1920 by 1080, and the plugins don't clutter up the screen so much. This is the resolution that I intend to record videos on in the future. Which makes this a good time to ask, do any of my usual viewers find this screen more difficult to view than my usual videos? If so, please speak up. I want to make sure that this new resolution doesn't hurt my content's viewability. Most of your add-ons you can just drag to a new location on the screen. As you can see, I've chosen to focus all of my parsers on the right and all of my buffs and debuffs on the left. I have put my equipment and stats down to the lower right next to my hit points and that of my party and alliance. Play with your add-ons and see what works best for you. With all the new space, you should have lots of options for placement of add-ons that you didn't have before. Note that some add-ons positions need to be changed through their settings.xml text files. Check the help page for the add-on or plugin for the info on how to move it if you're having problems. The last thing to mention is that this will affect your frames per second. I find it reduces mine to 27 to 33 frames per second in most highly trafficked areas or in places like Dynamist and Odyssey. A beast of a gaming machine, I'm sure will be able to run it at higher FPS numbers, but did want to warn people that you will take an FPS hit by running your install in 4K. I hope anyone looking to make the leap to 4K feels a little more comfortable with it now and what the end result will be. I know I was heavily discouraged from other people from going to 4K because I was told everything would be blurry, not look right, and that it wasn't going to work with most of my games. However, I found the truth to be actually completely contrary to that. It has worked with every game that I have, and I have literally hundreds, and for the vast majority of them, it has vastly improved the gaming experience. So anyone looking to make the jump to 4K, it does take a little bit of work, but I definitely think it's worth it. Have a great week, everyone. Stay safe and stay healthy. Thanks for watching.